the rub for me is that if everybody says, yes, I want to be this, but then when they actually create it, we know statistically that half of them will not. Either they're full of it, right, or what is it? Like, that's what I don't understand. That's what I'm trying to answer in myself is, how do we know that most people are unhappy, but then we start businesses, like we start businesses, and then we still are gonna, there's a good chance we might create a company that people are unhappy.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to today's podcast, Barcast. I'm still not getting in the habit of saying that, Barcast, because I think it's genius to just call it a Barcast, but whatever.
Is this like patting yourself on the back?
Yeah, because I'm the least creative person I know, and then I put out creative YouTube content.
Wait, so would we consider that creative where you took podcast and we're sitting in a bar and
That's
you
a
came
stretch.
up with
Listen,
Barcast?
Yes, that is a stretch for me. You don't even know. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in today. Hopefully I earned a subscription and a thumbs up from this video. What?
Oh, earned a subscription, sorry. You just start over.
Hopefully I earned a subscription. You're checking me up, man.
Thumbs up.
And a thumbs up for this podcast, Barcast. From this Barcast. Last week we brought you some awesome content. If you didn't go see it, please go back and watch last week's video because we're going to be continuing it today. Just some incredible, I mean, you were just on a roll, man. Kristian is super passionate.
I literally blacked out. I have no idea what happened.
Kristian is super passionate about what it is that he does as far as just being an entrepreneur, but also just being an overall coach. He's been a huge difference maker for We Trade HQ as a whole, and really just for me personally. I mean, honestly, if I wasn't in that class, that management class that I took with you, I probably wouldn't be an entrepreneur because I didn't think that I had the ability to do it, you know. Yeah. But
262 Hospitality, changing lives, one student at a time. Take the course.
But I think what we wanted to touch on today was just going into coaching and like how you were able to do that. We kind of left it off, and I was kind of bummed about like killing that momentum a little bit. But you know, going into like you were talking about this book that you were reading and finding a mentor for you,
yeah,
which is kind of odd in itself. But I think everybody should have their own mentor. Just for me, because you kind of are my mentor, and my mentor has a mentor. It's just weird. But
yeah,
you know, going into like coaching and how you're able to do that and be able to like impact businesses in the way that you do. Touch on that a little bit, and like just start off like when you were reaching out to your mentor and
yeah. So I'd like to just take a pause and just talk about how it's really cool that just so happens we're wearing the exact same outfits and we decided. If you watched the last week's video, if you haven't watched the last week's video,
ignore everything.
Then I got a problem with you. We're going to have a talk. We're going to have a sidebar. But, and you are creative. You had the Own the Chaos. You came up with that name, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I had some help with it.
All that stuff's out of the way. So, all right, so I had this line that resonated with me. It was somebody had put it on a caption in Instagram, and it was, be firm in your values, but flexible in your perspective, right? And that's so good. I'm going to say it one more time.
That is pretty good.
Be firm in your values, but flexible in your perspective, right? And you know, I really encourage you to watch that last episode if you didn't, because like what we talked about was where I was struggling with the idea of like how I taught and how I coached, and really how my clients want to be taught and want to be coached. And so I was facing that struggle, and that line resonated with me. Unfortunately, it was after I'd already found coactive coaching and I found this mentor,
right.
But it was just another sign that I was like, yes, you're doing the right thing. And it really resonated with me because a client said, like, who coaches you? As in, like, so how do you know that's the right way? So all of these things come together at the same time, but it's that idea of, as a coach, you're always trying to learn. That's a fair point. Like, because I don't claim to have the right answer, but I need to be clear on who I am and what I am.
Right.
And that's what I do with my clients is like, I'm not trying to make you a mini Cash. Like, I'm not trying to make you me. I'm trying to work through who you are and your awareness, and to decide if you are comfortable where you stand, and what do you want to do more of, and what do you want to try to work towards to develop. And so that's where the flexibility comes, is I am firm in who I am, but there is this little piece where I'm willing to hear other perspectives to maybe change my own, but it's going to be it's going to take a lot to change my own perspective. Like, you're not going to just be able to, like, I see these owners, it's like one person talks to them and this is the way they operate. Then the different person talks to them and they shift, and it's like, my head's on a swivel, because it's like, you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So that line is like, has stuck with me for the past 2 weeks, and like, that's it for me right now.
So, and we touched on this last time about, like, having students or, business owners basically telling you how you should be coaching them, which I thought was interesting, because the whole reason they hired you is to be able to coach them. And if they're not coachable, that's obviously a big problem. So how do you combat that, or how do you, I guess, take that on? Because I think it probably is a huge challenge. Most business owners, from what I've experienced, and you can tell me if I am or not, but I think I'm probably a little bit one of the outliers, has a very strong personality and very hard-headed. But I think probably the most successful entrepreneurs are ones that can hear somebody out and make changes as they feel like they need to.
Yeah.
But like, kind of like what you're saying, sticking to their values, but also being flexible. I think that probably is one of the fundamental points of what makes a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, the toughest thing about my job is to try to develop a skill that I'll never see in action, right? So I am trying to coach coaches. That's really what I'm doing. I'm coaching entrepreneurs, but really, like, if they develop, they'll have a bunch of people under them, and their job is to manage them and to coach them.
Yeah.
And so the first piece is to help you understand who you are, but then I have to teach you how to coach. That's one of the hardest things to do, especially when I can't see you do it in real life. And there's some things I can mitigate, but most likely I'll be long gone when you really come into your own as a coach, as a teacher. And so how I reconcile it with myself is I'm not in a battle. Like, if you and I sit down, I'm not here to convince you that I'm not trying to convince you to come over to my side. Right? I want to work with people who are humble enough to realize that, like, we all have work to do. And so when I sit down as a coach, it's not to work on me. Mm-hmm. That comes off as I'm perfect. No, I'm talking about the things I know, the things I've worked through, and I have confidence in my belief system. Well, there's the behind the scenes where I'm getting coached and I'm reading and I'm talking to people and I'm trying to develop myself, but sitting with a client is neither the time nor the place for me to do that.
Right.
So we have to remember that as coaches, and my success, one of the pieces to my success has to be predicated on how good of a coach you become and understanding what your style is. And so if you're humble enough to have conversations, cool. If you're like, no, that doesn't work for me, even if I believe that your path is wrong or that you have things to fall into, 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to bring it up, because that's not my place. You're going to get dirty, you're going to get your knee scraped, and then you're going to come back to me, and now you're ready to listen. When you're ready to listen is when we can have a conversation.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I fell into that, but it's kind of funny how, like, you came into being with We Trade HQ because, before obviously you came on, you were my instructor, and then we were friends, and so we were just talking about me starting the business, and so, like, I was just coming to you as a mentor or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was just like a tipping point to where I was just like, okay, no, I need to call Kristian because I think I actually need him as far as like being in the business itself. And so I think that was some of our conversations that we had leading up to that point, I think was probably kind of goes along with that a little bit, because when I called you and I talked to you about it, and you were kind of like, I was kind of waiting for this day to come about. But, but so just kind of funny how that plays into that.
Well, so that story is an interesting story you're talking about, because stutter. Having trouble with my words today. I feel like Molly's gonna have like so much fun with. Not Molly. Who actually edits it?
Yeah, they both do.
They both edit it. Don't make me look like a damn fool.
Do it.
I feel like this gym. So, anyways, there's these two stories that come to mind. You're one of those stories, but yeah, I knew that I could provide value for you, or I knew that you could be a client of mine.
Yeah.
One was I told you that I wasn't ready to add marketing to sort of my mix, so I didn't want to rush myself, but I didn't want to add marketing in the mix was one. The other thing was that I think there's a little bit of a violation if we have a conversation on a mentorship level and then I say, hey, I can provide value. Like it's almost like trying to sell you. And I never want anybody to not feel comfortable to come up to me. I don't know how I totally feel about that because I'm kind of going both ways in the fact of like, well, if I can, but like, if I can deliver value, then I should tell somebody that. But anyways, I knew that like this is stuff I could help you on, but I didn't want to force anything. Mm-hmm. And it came around, right? And that was cool. Just recently, the same thing with one of my clients was we have a small contract, and I've seen all these things she's struggling with, and I've said in back conversations with my mentor, I've kind of been like, hey, I feel like I can provide all this value, but one of the big things I said was, I have to focus on my contracts, and you know this. Yeah. For my clients, I start with a trial, sort of a trial period, and so I encourage that for everybody. Like I encourage any entrepreneurs that have a service that you're billing monthly. First, like have a trial period because you got to have that time frame where you guys can feel each other out. There's going to be clients that you don't want to work with. Right. Well, don't sign a year contract if you don't know how it is to work together, or they may not like you and you don't connect. And so if you don't connect with your client, then like you're going to have an upset customer at the end, right? So my contracts, the first contract is never over 90 days. I typically like a 30-day contract because it lets us feel each other out. Mm-hmm. With that said, I'm in the midst of the 90-day contract. I'm like halfway through, and I'm kind of going back and forth in my head where I'm like, I can provide this value. Like, let me tell her that we should do a bigger contract, and I can do that too. And I have to stop myself, and I have to say, no, honor your commitment to the 90-day contract, and the time will come. So what happened? I get a text a couple days ago, and she's basically like, I feel like if you want to, 262 can help with this, this, and this. Yeah. It just kind of, things have a way of working themselves out.
Yeah, so like, I kind of agree with you though. Like, there's part of you that still wants to like, I don't want to sound like a cheesy car salesman, but make the sale.
Yeah.
But then also having like the patience enough to be like, the sale's going to be like, you're selling yourself just by the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And obviously that doesn't apply to all areas of sales. It applies to this because, we talk about how we feel about just building relationships and the value in that which I think is to a certain extent invaluable. But I don't know how I would do it. Like,
well, there's that balance, and I think that's right now. I think the business world, especially like the digital world, is about value, right? It's relationships and value. We've covered a lot about relationships, but let's cover value. Value, it's not giving a discount, right? It's giving value to establish your expertise and your credibility, because what's the difference between you on YouTube and anybody else on YouTube? I can start a YouTube channel today and do the same thing you do, right? But what is truly my expertise and my knowledge? And I have to build towards that. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about, you got to give, it's like a labor of love is the best way to say it. It's like a labor of love is like, spend your labor, spend your time giving a gift that provides value to somebody, and it could be multiple ones, but that's kind of like how you establish credibility, so they want to then listen to you. And so that's the same idea, is like, how much labor of love do you give, and when do you give it, and then when does that transition into you trying to close the sale? So the example for you, I said the first time I had you come to me and you basically said, hey, can you do you want to be a pitch in this marketing? Right? I didn't say anything about that, even though I felt like I could provide value.
Yeah, because you weren't the only person that we were talking to.
Yeah, well, you say that I wasn't, but I still don't know if I believe you. But yeah, I wasn't the only person, so I didn't even have it. You just said, pitch us. Well, then the other example was when I became the CSO. Like I was ready to, I was ready to get another client. And I was looking at all the work I was doing, and I felt we had just started a new contract, and I was like, that's kind of shitty for me to now then bring up like, hey, I want more money, or hey, what? I almost didn't. It took me a long time to like come to you because I was not gonna approach you guys because we did have a new client.
Right.
But then I got to a point where I was sitting there and I was like, listen, if I care about my clients and I think that this is what's best for them, why don't I just be honest and I just say it? And that's what I said. And I was like, I'm about to go get a new client, but like, I should have you tell me no. Right. I should have you, say no. And I mean, it's probably the smartest decision I could have made is to actually bring it up to you because I didn't even tell you. It was just like, hey, I just presented you my situation. I was like, man, I'm struggling. And I was really transparent. And I said I felt really bad about bringing it up, even though we just came through a contract. But it was the smartest thing I could have done.
Yeah, and I agree with that too because, I mean, and you could tell, like I knew that you were genuine about it because it just like, it almost took you could tell it struggled for you to just get it out.
Yeah.
Just as far as the beginnings of that conversation.
Yeah.
But at the turning point, well, I wouldn't say turning point, but for me, after you brought that to my attention and I had that conversation with Jake and I was like, listen, you've already made an impact on what we've got going on.
Yeah.
With just having you for a small period of time, and not just over a span of months, but like just each month you're only spending X amount of hours with us. And I said, can you what if we had him for more of that time, not just like quantifiably, quantitatively,
or something you could quantify.
Basically, if we had you...
I will always be your instructor. I always teach you. I got you. You should have... can we put up like a little imaginary, what's that called? Like a little bib? Like a little bib, I'll clean your face off when you can't get the words out.
Yeah, instructor and mother are two different things. But...
who's stuttering now?
Yeah, I know, right? But, my thought was, okay, you've already made an impact on the company and you're only basically working for us part-time. What happens when we turn that into full-time?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Quantify.
But, and so for me, it was like, well, this is a no-brainer. I would rather you have, I would rather have more of you than less of you. And, if it's going to require paying you a little bit more money so that we can keep you on, that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it was like, yeah, let's do this.
When I think that happens a lot with business is a lot of times no one even asks. That's a big thing is you don't even ask for the sale. You could, or ask what you want, and you could use that in the example of sales. You can use that in the example of investors.
Yeah.
You can be talking to investors and they could be somebody who's willing to invest in you, but you haven't even asked them.
I think that's one of the biggest issues that I have with corporate America, just coming from corporate America and trying to be honest with people. You try to be honest with people, and it doesn't have to be disrespectful. You don't. I mean, I'm not just saying oh, this guy sucks, nothing like that. But if you're just honest with somebody, be like, listen, I've done X, Y, and Z. I feel like I'm worth more. And then when you go to your boss or manager or whatever in the corporate space, it's just kind of well, that was awfully, forward of you to say something or ambitious or whatever, and it's why should I feel bad about that? I put in the time, and in the department that I worked in, I made a pretty huge impact, and I was offered an increase in salary, and I was like, really, that's all that I'm worth to you guys?
Yeah.
And so that obviously that was probably one of the first turning points where I was like, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna
got you on the path of transitioning out.
But at the same time, it's because you're honest with me, and you know, and we're honest with each other all the time. Like, that's what's like pushed us forward faster.
Yeah.
Instead of just trying to beat around the bush all the time. And I think so much time is wasted trying to play politics, which is rampant in the corporate world.
Yeah.
It just hinders productivity. It hinders efficiency, like all of that stuff. Why not just get it out there and then let the chips fall where they may? And the worst thing that's going to happen is just saying, listen, we can't do it. If we couldn't have afforded you, we'd be like, listen, it's just not in the cards right now. We would love to have you. And then maybe later on down the road, that's when that happens. But, you know, I don't know. I just feel like that's one thing that people get hung up on so much. They're afraid to say something because, oh, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to miss that promotion.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
And I've dealt with that a lot, just being in the higher ed space. As you get into the corporate world, and as you move along, you get more confidence and you know your worth, right? I see entry level people not getting their worth. What I say to what you're saying, like my response to what you're saying is, think about what type of manager you want to work for. Right. And do you want to work for somebody who holds it against you for you to ask for a raise or for you to ask for the value you feel like you're providing?
Yeah.
That to me sounds like an insecure manager. That to me sounds like a manager who's going to hold you down if you ever try to move up. Right?
Yeah.
I had a manager who said, in 3 years, if you're still in this role, I haven't done my job. I need to move you along. Right?
Yeah.
I need to prepare you for your next role.
Right.
Never heard that before. The next job I took, I had a manager that every time I said, hey, can we talk? The first response was, are you leaving? Oh my God. and so that manager never wanted me to leave. Well, that's their own issue, and that's not a person I want to work for, because they're not going to develop me. They're not going to move me along. They're not going to present an opportunity that comes.
Right.
And that original manager, that first manager, who is one of my mentors and who I'm still in contact with today, she said 3 years. 3 years, you better be out of here. It was a year and like 9 months. I was on to the next one. Yeah. And that story is interesting because I wasn't even looking for a job. Somebody approached me, and I took the interview, and I felt really guilty because I felt like I was letting down my manager. So I approached her and I said, hey, I just want to be transparent. There's this opportunity. I don't know if I want to apply for it. Like, I feel like I'd be letting you down. And I told her what it was. And she's like, you're an idiot if you don't apply for that job, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of manager I want to be.
100%.
And so people need to think about that. It's like, you have expectation, your manager has expectations of you. Why can't you have expectations of your manager and of your business?
Yeah.
And you should.
Yeah.
God, that was good.
That was pretty damn good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
So you
no, but like that's 100% what's wrong in the corporate space.
Yeah.
Like, and leave comments down below. Like, I feel like this topic is just way too important for you not to chime in on, people, but just understanding how to manage people and not, I don't know what a good word is for it or adjective, but like just, it's like dictate people. I think people get into this management role or they get into a leadership role and think that they have to tell people exactly what to do.
Yeah.
And if they deviate from that, there's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, obviously getting the job done is the most important part. But why does it matter how they do it? And why do you have to have such a stranglehold on people to just being so structured in a way to not be able to think outside the box? And I think that's like one of the biggest problems in working in the corporate space, is that you don't have the freedom to like think outside that box. You got to stay in your lane, and that's it. Like there's no deviating from that.
And you're not encouraged to make the business better, right? There's this whole movement of results-oriented work, which I'm a huge fan of. You know, I'm a huge fan of, like, if you work somewhere, you shouldn't be penalized for becoming more efficient. Right? Like, that's what 40-hour work week is like. You have to work 40 hours. Like, if you become more efficient, and it only takes you 32 hours, well, somebody's going to put more on your plate.
Right.
Where's your benefit? The business benefits from that. So then two things happen. Either you continue getting things put on your plate, and you build resentment for your company, or you stop trying to push yourself and you do the status quo, and your capacity, your potential never gets reached, and the business doesn't benefit like it should.
Yep. And then you're miserable.
And then you're miserable,
I was miserable
because of the resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're just going to work. You're like, okay, I can't wait till work's over because like I feel like I'm going nowhere. Like I felt like I was in a really good job, and when I left that, people were like, "You're crazy. What is wrong with you?" Because like I was in just a really great job. It was T. Rowe Price, and I liked the company. It was a good company. It was a great job, but I was just miserable.
Well, all right. So this is the question I have. So if we know that most people are unhappy at work, so like you watching here, at least half of the people that watch this are not happy at work, statistically.
Yeah.
If we know that, right? If we know that's the case, that most people are unhappy rather than happy, and we also know that if I ask everybody, if I poll everybody who's watching and saying, what type of manager do you want to be? They want to be that manager that's the one that like their employees are happy, or what kind of, if you're an entrepreneur, what kind of work environment you want to create. They want a high morale, right? The rub for me is that if everybody says, yes, I want to be this, but then when they actually create it, we know statistically that half of them will not. Either they're full of it,
Right.
or what is it? Like that's what I don't under, that's what I'm trying to answer in myself is how do we know that most people are unhappy, but then we start businesses, like we start businesses, and then we still are gonna, there's a good chance we might create a company that people are unhappy.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
I don't know, but that sounds like it's a good topic for our next episode. So that's it, guys. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you want to see more business-minded type videos such as this. I'm having a blast doing this. I know that you are too. And so special thanks to Kristian for your time. Thanks for the horse you came in on in Fells Point. If you're in the area, I highly encourage you to come check this place out. It is absolutely awesome. And that is it for me, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I'll see you all before the bell. B. Smith is out, and Kristian has to come up with some sort of outro. I don't know.
Like, subscribe, take a shot of whiskey.
There you go.